Hey guys, welcome back to the animation series. Today we're going to be working on making a cool little loader animation that you could use in your website. It's just going to be like a little orbital thing with some circles orbiting around each other. So let's get started. Let's start with our HTML and create a wrapper for our animation. So this will just contain the entire orbit animation here. Let's just so we can see it better, let's do class wrapper. Let's set a background color of pink. We'll remove it later. Let's set a width of 400 and a height of 400. So our animation is going to be contained inside this guy here. Let's just give it some margin. Alright, so we've got a nice place to work here. Alright, so inside here we're going to have a center circle and with other circles rotating around it clockwise. So let's create our circles. So let's say we have 5 circles. This first one is going to be our center one. So let's define what a circle looks like. Circle will have a width 20 pixels and a height of 20 pixels. We can always change that per circle, but let's just start with this for now. Let's do a background color and let's grab our assets. Let's just do a nice green here. And we also want it to be a circle, so we need our border radius to be 50%. That'll make them nice and round. Alright, so let's set the first circle to the very center of our animation here. So let's do circle, circle, center. So we'll grab this guy. We want it to be positioned absolute, and we want it to be in the middle of this area, so half of the width and height. So let's do from the top 200 pixels and from the left 200 pixels. Now this is obviously not quite centered. Now this absolute is doing absolute on the page, because if we set this guy on the wrapper to be relative, that'll put the absolute positioning in respect to the relative element around it. Now this is not quite centered. If we grab our ruler here, you can see 200, 200 puts it starting with the top left at 200, 200. So we want to move it back some by half of the size of the circle. So the size of the circle is 220. So let's bump this down to 190. There we go. That's nice and centered. Now we want to put the other circles at various places around this center circle and then have them rotate. So what we can do is let's just work on one circle for now. So let's pretend we just have one. And since we want it to rotate, what if we thought about it as being on its own plane? So let's grab this guy and rotate it in a plane class. Now what is a plane? Let's see here. Let's give the plane a background color just so we can see it. And we want to see it transparent so we can see a little behind it. So let's do 0 red, 200 green, 0 blue, and half of the opacity. Let's give it a width and a height. And the width and the height here we can think of as the radius of where this circle is in respect to the center. So let's say we want it to be 60 pixels away from the center. So let's do a width and a height of 60 pixels. Now we also need this positioned absolute. And we want it to be overlaying on the center here, right? So let's do here top. It's going to be halfway minus the half of the width and height. So we'll say 200 pixels is the half of the size of our animation minus half of the width, so we'll do 170. Left will also be 170. There we go. Let's actually make this a little bigger. Let's do 100 pixels, which means we need to drop this down to 150. Now you can see that circle is 50 pixels away from, or about 50 pixels away from the center here. The whole size of it is 100. Now let's make this whole plane rotate around the center circle. So let's make an animation here. Let's call it orbit. We'll say from, and we'll do our transform rotate 0 degrees to start with, and 2 will be transform rotate 360 degrees. So now we have our animation. We can just apply it to the plane. So animation, we'll do orbit. Let's do 5 seconds, infinite, and linear. There we go. So now we have the plane rotating around the center. If we drop this background color, we now have our first circle orbiting the center. Alright, now let's create a second plane with its own circle. Let's call this one plane 1. Now let's create a plane 2, and inside of it we'll have a circle. So let's create a class for plane 2. And we're going to copy all this and just make some adjustments. So let's adjust these values here. Let's make it bigger. So we'll bump it up to 200 pixels. And since it's bigger, we need to start closer to the origin here. So we need to lower this by half of the amount. So remember, take this out. So remember, as this size increases, we're going to start closer to the top and left side of the screen. Let's bring this back in here. Now we don't want it to orbit at the same speed as the next circle, so let's change this speed to maybe 8. There we go. Now let's just do one more for good measure. So do plane 3 with a child of circle. Can't type today at all. Alright, let's go into plane 3. We will copy all these guys in here. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. Let's do 250, which means we need to lower this by 25, so that'll bring it up to 75 pixels. There we go. And let's change this guy to maybe 12 seconds. There we go. Cool little orbit animation. Let's just go up here real quick to our wrapper. Let's pull off this background color. And there we go. We can definitely expand on this and make even more complex spinners in the next episode. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe and hit the thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one.